All right, guys. Welcome. This is our second to the last. This is our last presentation week. We have next week scheduled to go over exams, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm sorry, exam questions. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of our call if we have time today. But it looks like all of our presenters are here now for our meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing, and we can start off with approval processes. Are you ready for that one?
Yep.
Alrighty, stop and you can take over.
Okay. Should see my screen now, I think.
Yep.
So the topic was approval processes, the capabilities and use cases. So I started with what is the approval process. It's basically a process that automates how Salesforce records and approves in your org. And you can specify the necessary steps for a record to be approved and who approves it at each step, meaning it could be a single step, but could be also multiple steps for approval. For example, when an employee creates a time-off request and Salesforce has to send an approval request to the employee's manager. That's one example. I'll get to more examples later. And then you define the actions that take, to take based on what happens during the process. For example, if the time-off request is approved, then update the fields on the employee's record that the request is approved. And then what days it is, or anything you can probably imagine. Just update any field. On the right-hand side, you can see like a flow of an approval process. In Salesforce, it doesn't really show that flow when you create that approval process, but just for the thinking, it's probably nice to map it out before you create the approval process, so you know what your steps are going to be, what needs to be updated, and so on. Here's basically the process of the approval process when creating it and what to think about. There's another use case here. For example, when a user requests for approval for a new position, then there needs to be initial submission actions. And by default, it will lock the account once it goes into the approval process. And this ensures that no one else is editing that record during the time of the approval. Then you have approval steps that come afterwards, and they define the chain of the approval for a particular approval process. In this example, the first step is sends the approval request to the submitter's direct manager. If the direct manager rejects the request, then we set that up in the final rejection action, and we would set this approval status to rejected. If the direct manager would approve the request and the record moves to the next step, to the CEO, and he rejects the position, then the approval process status will change to rejected as well. If everyone approves of it, then we would have the approval status changing to approved, and then, yeah, it's approved. I have a little example here how to set up an approval process and what's needed to do it. Another use case here is we want to make sure that a manager approves the opportunities that are discounted more than 40%. And the opportunity should reflect the approval status, approved or not approved. So if we go ahead and want to create that approval process, then we need to have some things in order before we can start with the approval process. We need to make sure that we have the discount percentage field on the opportunity object as well as the approval status. We need to set up the approval process. That's what I will show you next. For the notification that the manager will get, we need to create the email template that will be sent to him. And we need the approval actions for to change the status based on what the what the manager said, approved or not approved. To set up an approval process, we enter approval process in the quick find box on the left-hand side, and we select the opportunity for the approval process to be based in opportunity. And then Salesforce has a jumpstart wizard, which helps you going through the process and automate some things for you. And then you can configure the approval process, which you can see on the right-hand side here. You give it a name, you choose the email template that will be sent, and then you specify the entry criteria. So only the opportunities with the discount percentage greater of 40% will go into that approval process. And then you have you can select the approver. So you can have it set automatically, or you can say that the submitter chooses the approver manually. When you click on save, you will have a little help screen in between that tells you that you have to create additional steps if needed, or you have to add more values, or the rejection actions or anything here. That was a nice little feature that they added that in, so you don't forget anything. And once you click on that approval process detail page, you will go into this view here, which is basically your whole approval process with the approval steps in here and the final approval action and rejection action. I have a little screenshot of that as well. Here on the left side, you can see the approval action where we say, okay, we call that action approved. And the field we want to update is the discount percent status, and we want to add the value approved to it. If it gets rejected, we do the same thing, but in the rejection action, we do a field update, call it not approved, and set the value to not approved. Some use cases I found for approval processes. We went through a few during the presentation already. Another one is to make sure that a prospect account is approved before they're converted to customers. I had the example of file a PTO, paid time off request, and have their managers approve it. Another one there is if your company requires that employees file expense reports for managers to approve, you can automate this process in Salesforce as well. This would be a two-step expense report. For example, if the expense would be lower than a value of X, then there would be no approval. And then you set the entry criteria, say, okay, if it's higher than an amount, then it has to be approved by this and that. And if it's higher than that, then it makes it a multiple step approval process. The next example here is what we just went through, is if an opportunity is discounted for more than a value, then require a CEO or manager approval. And the last one I have here is when your company interviews candidates for a position, you may have several levels of approval before you can send an offer letter. So this gets all approved and signed off. I found this online where someone described the differentiation between workflow rules and approval processes. It says that the workflow triggers automatically on any action, like insert and update, whereas you have the entry criteria for the approval process. Then it said, and I'm not fully understanding if I understand that right, maybe you can tell me if I understand that wrong, but the user can see the approval process. Basically, there would be a button for him to send it for approval, whereas in a workflow rule, you wouldn't see that as a user. It would just do its thing.
That's true.
It requires the interaction. It does not allow you to go. That's why it stops in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can trigger an approval process with Process Builder. but not with workflow rules.
Yeah. Yeah, that was also something I read, that if you want to make sure that it enters the approval process, then you can create a step in the process builder, it said. If you're worried that the user will forget to hit the button to send it for approval,
Right.
it was a good tip as well.
And I've seen people bypass the entry role of the approval process too, and just manage that through Process Builder. So if Process Builder manages the rule aspect, sends it in that way. So.
Another thing I found was that you can set up the approve process via email. I thought this is a normal thing. I never knew it another way. But actually you had to enable that in the process automation settings to enable the email approval response checkbox. And yeah, that was a quick walkthrough through the approval process.
And can you do approvals off of your mobile device as well?
Yes. I would just say that.
I think that's another setting though, I think. Might have to double check me on that, but I think that could be one that you can disable as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else know off the top of your head, or?
I do not.
Okay.
But they keep changing everything that's available on mobile and the actual app. And
right.
So
yeah, the good news is this stuff the test won't cover that newest mobile thing. So
now if they could just get Trailhead on the Android phones.
Trailhead Go. Right. All right. I don't see it, but I don't see it there anyway. I do think that is a setting though. It can be controlled. I could be wrong. I probably should shut up and verify before I say anything more. Okay, good. Any questions on approval process? Anybody have any good, bad experiences with it? Lessons learned?
This is Alana. The only thing, and he had mentioned it, is it does lock down the record.
Mm-hmm.
So for a client of ours, we actually created like a custom object child record that would lock down and get approved that way so that they could still make adjustments to the opportunity. Other data that was being kept there until it was approved.
How's that different to unlock it in the approval process?
I'm sorry, what was that question?
How's that different from unlocking it in the approval process itself? I saw that by default it's locked, but you can unlock it. The initial submission action. Okay, I see here down here you have the record lock and you can edit that.
Yeah, you can only do it after somebody's taken action.
It's like once it's submitted, it's locked until it's approved or rejected.
Yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah, good. Any other thoughts on this? All right, I'll let you stop sharing, and then Jackie, you're up with Salesforce Mobile.
All right. I actually edited mine, went through it twice, only because when I first went through it, I was trying to capture all the things it doesn't do. And when I realized it was only 3% of the test between me and the next presenter, I'm like, okay, I'm way going too deep into this. So I backtracked.
Right.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting too, because probably a lot of information you found is related to the new mobile. And
yeah.
Anything the exam's going to cover will probably be the original stuff. I doubt it get turned around that fast. So.
Right. So kind of just high level, obviously mobile app is included with every Salesforce license. One big thing, it's a plug and play, which means you just go out and download it from the App Store or Google Play, and then it works right out of the box. Basic, you don't have to do setup if you don't require it. It does obviously run on both Android and on Apple, on iOS. It does have offline capabilities, so the mobile users aren't affected if they're commuting or in, I was like in the bunker style buildings. That was off of something I had on Salesforce, so that was kind of funny. So even if you're in a still building, you can still work offline on it. It works seamlessly with the desktop version, so you can go between your desktop and your iPad or mobile device, and it's just an app. So at the end of the day, basically the app is powered by the Salesforce platform, so it's just point and click, and you can customize it if you need to. Some of the things that high level is different. There's just a lot of features that aren't available, and this is where I started getting hooked on all the things that it can't do. But the basic functionality is there in mobile. One example that they had is it's more about probably layout and user. If you have a custom object or even like an opportunity object and you ask like 100 different fields because you load things in, you don't want your mobile experience to be like that. So the good thing is you can create custom layouts for just the mobile experience so that you can hide maybe some of those fields so that a typical user isn't having to scroll to get the data. So that's probably the biggest thing you want to do is customize it so the user experience is better. But for the most part, out of the box functionality is the same. Same user license, same type, same platform. All of that is the same. If you are restricted from seeing certain objects, that carries over to the mobile. You can also, when you log in, go to the sandbox. So you have both of those experiences available. Here was just some high-level things it doesn't support, and that is standard or custom objects. Trying to think, no console, no agent console if you have sales console or service console. And it doesn't support advanced currency management if that's something you have. I gotta think here. Some of the custom Salesforce apps, it kind of blanketed that, but there are ones that you can use. They're just available in some format on those. Here were some just basic screenshots that you have out there. Obviously, your app launcher, this is the new version. That's not what the old one looks like, but the new version, basically still always on the left-hand side, all your objects go vertically instead of horizontally across the top. So it's just a little bit of a layout difference. Actions are always available at the top of the screen. So you can customize the ones you want to see, and then there's always the more button that you can click on to go into edit, delete, any other actions that you give your users. Global search is still there at the top. It's at the bottom, whatever you have for your icons at the bottom, but the global search works the same, and it'll bring up anywhere where you're searching for across the objects. And then the layout is just back to what we said, is there are some compact layouts that are a little bit smaller. So you're only going to see like the first 5 fields, what you have in your page layout. So, and then I just kind of added in some of the basic help that you can go out to, and there's some trailheads out there that you can do if you guys have not installed mobile. It kind of goes back and forth on some of the comments that was made out there. Is basically if you don't have mobile, you're wasting money. So it's definitely a feature out there for your users to have. As an admin, it's pretty easy to do, and out of the box, you don't really have to do a lot if you don't want to. Is there any questions?
What are some of the capabilities that mobile has that you wouldn't have on your desktop?
Ooh, I guess good question.
And you don't have to answer that. Anybody can answer it if you know the answer. There's a couple that I can think of.
I would be curious to know those, Terry, because I always thought that they were playing catch up, trying to mirror what you could do in the desktop. So
the ability to make a phone call.
Okay.
So don't overthink it. The mapping feature, so getting driving directions, that makes that simpler.
Sure.
Yep.
The
I suppose
logging,
texting.
yeah, logging a call.
Yep.
One of the things that I always do when I train people is show them how you can use your phone, your mobile, to dictate your notes,
True.
as opposed to typing them in. That's always a big plus for people. The Today calendar on your mobile device pulls in both your Salesforce and your device calendar, so you see a combo view there.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably a few others. I think you're right, Kevin. I think text is an option too on mobile. I'm not sure what it does with it, but I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that's kind of a gotcha on the configuration is the actions that you see on your desktop for sending an email.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a different action for the mobile device. Call is specific to mobile, where it's not an option on your desktop. So you kind of have to watch those configuration on the action side. But yeah, I'm a huge fan. I really like mobile, and to me, it's a great selling point for salespeople who are a little bit more hesitant to jump into a desktop, because if they're on the road, they always have their phone with them. So that's
Mm-hmm.
very good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Anything else on mobile from anyone?
Is everybody using it? I mean, we are at ours, but I didn't know if there's any other orgs that haven't deployed it.
We're barely using it.
Barely.
We have
We
it
use it a lot.
enabled and everything, but account managers prefer to go on Safari and pull up Salesforce.com on the iPads mainly, not on the phones necessarily.
Yeah. And does it run on an iPad? Mobile?
Yes, it does. Yep.
Yep, it does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Any other thoughts on that?
We use the mobile app quite a bit. Our sales reps out in the field log all their appointments and visits through it. They love it.
Yeah, I find that the road people really like it a lot. This makes their life easier. And the first time they see the ability to dictate their notes, then it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that existed prior to the Einstein AI voice, right?
I believe so, because that's just regular phone functionality that's dictating into a field. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good stuff. Thank you, Jackie. Kevin Garrettson, you're up next.
All right. Well, Terry, first of all, thank you for sending out that email yesterday, because you reminded me that I needed to do my topic. But I was just in a 4-hour meeting prior to this one and contemplating whether I actually created a presentation about the correct thing. So,
and the answer
tell
is?
me if I'll show you what I researched, and you tell me if it was wrong, because I researched Lightning Sync for Outlook, which is around syncing events and contacts from your Outlook through Exchange server into Salesforce. But then I started rethinking about this, sort of like Jackie looking at percentages, and I thought, oh, am I just supposed to show in Outlook where you can log in email?
Yeah, so I don't know the answer to that. It's probably all the above.
Okay, I will show what I have.
Okay.
And for what it's worth, either way, it's information.
Yep.
Just 1 second. Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't pull up my thing since I was in the 4-hour meetings. Who does those, right?
Yeah, people.
Just 1 second here.
There it is. It's for your first one there from yesterday and your recent. There you go.
Yep. Okay. All right. So, so when I read the topic, I took it to mean that basically we were talking about what's called the Lightning Sync for Outlook, which also combines Google email services. So essentially what this is a connection configuration between Microsoft Exchange or Google email services to be able to sync information back and forth between those services. And so basically your email information. So your contacts and your calendar basically from either Outlook or Google Mail service, right? And so basically this is one of those things where this connection is set and then users do not have to individually sign in. It will, based upon how you set it up, it becomes like an org-wide type, sort of like a default as far as what does get synced or doesn't get synced. Oops. But basically, it allows you to share information back and forth. Or one way, there's some options I'll show you later on. So it does not have to be bidirectional. So if you remove something in one system, it doesn't necessarily have to be removed from the other system. And you can have some manual control over what actually does get synced across. And you can allow users to do that as well. So one of the things about this is it's a little bit of a rabbit hole topic. There's a lot of information around this. So if you want to do this, you have to work with whoever is in your infrastructure team that works with, and I used the example of Outlook because I felt like that was the most, probably most accurate when it came to business and not the Gmail services. But in our case, if you're looking at Outlook, you basically would have to work with your infrastructure team that takes care of your Exchange server. And you have some very specific things that you have to do in order to get this connection set up and working. Among those is certificate information that you have to make sure is like basically in compliance. And then you have to configure firewalls. There's a authentication and auto discovery stuff. And then, so those are things that you have to do. So you would have to work with them to get that done. Once those things are in place, then you go through these steps. So I realize this is not that wonderful, but I am going to show you in my training work where this is so that it makes a little bit more sense. Just 1 second. Okay, so basically through setup, you go to your quick find and you look for sync. And this would be where you would pick whether you're doing it through Google or you're going through Exchange and Microsoft. I will go here. I have already done a little bit of setting up stuff. Just a second, I can move your pictures over to my other side so they're not in my way. So you would enable this. I have it enabled right now. You can see that I've already entered some credentials. So basically, you have to enter a username and password. Now this way is, there's one, you can do connections through authentication, SO authentication, or you can do them as a service account. So basically I went down the path of a service account, or excuse me, the O authentication or a service account. I went down the path of a service account, figuring almost business case of how I think that we would currently do it if we did it where I'm at. We don't have it enabled, but so someone, the service account, you would put the credentials in, and then you can, if you have multiple other domains, you can put them in as well. So for instance, my username would be my email, kgarrettson@holmesmurphy.com, but we might manage a holmesmurphy.net, or holmesmurphy.org, something like that, you would put the variations on your domain in this comma separated field, and you would save that. You do not have to test here. If you're like me and your Exchange stuff is not set up, this will just sit and spin and spin and spin. And especially since I'm in this test org. But you would set those things up first, and then you go and you define, you set up configurations to define what you want synced. So you actually then have to create a new configuration. I have one that I have created, but these are essentially the same, would be the same field. So if I hit edit, you'll see what it looks like when you first, when you first go in to change this. So you would pick, you know, a user or group, or excuse me, user or profile that you would want this synchronization to work for. I take this to mean, and I didn't actually read this in documentation, but that you might be able to set up syncs that work in different behaviors based upon profile or a specific user. So you might have different business user cases where you want some of the syncs to work differently for different groups. Maybe you want it to be bi-directional for one group, but not for another. You would be able to do that through this configuration. And then by creating a second configuration for, you know, the other separated group. But you can tell it what you want to sync as far as the, okay, so here's the direction, right? So you can have it not sync, which I don't understand actually why you would do that if you're setting up a syncing configuration. You can have it sync both ways. You can have it come from Salesforce back to the Exchange server, or from Exchange only to Salesforce. So you've got some, depending upon your business case need, you've got a variety of different things you can do. And you may want to consider, if you're setting up automation, you might want to consider that if somebody has all their doctor's appointments that are not work related in their Exchange calendar, maybe you don't want that auto syncing down. There's a lot of different things that you need to take into account. Some of those things are reasons why we are not currently using this where I work, and no one has taken the time to actually get it organized and you know, configured out correctly. You can take and change as far as for contacts, you can change it to be based upon when it was changed, like most recently or last updated, or if it's the first record that was created, so that you always get the oldest creation date. You can also change field mappings. So it's going to automatically have basics, basic things that people would normally map, but you can actually change these if you want them to go to you know, some different fields. Maybe I don't want the assistant name to go to assistant. Maybe I want it to go, you know, to, well, this is a bad example, but I can change it so that it could go to, you know, contact owner. So you have a little bit of play there. So then, excuse me, sorry, this is the data settings, I should say. So syncing, you can even get more granularity because this is just around the data. So now on the events themselves, you can change whether it's bidirectional or you know, one way or the other way as well. And then I don't know if this conflict behavior changes. It must change based upon if you, yeah, it does. Okay. So that it knows what's going to win based upon which sync that you pick. And then you're able to specify on the how events work. So basically, if you want everything that's an event to sync across, or if you want users to be able to pick specific things. Now, the scenario like I was talking about before is in some places, your users might be heavily reliant upon their Outlook calendar to do non-business specific things, and you may not want all events. We have all kinds of users to do this, and we would just be flooded with all of their personal appointments. So that's just one of the things to think about when you're doing configurations. So you can also do field mapping edits here when it comes to events. It's not as robust, but I think that's because there's not as much information or standard fields there. So basically you would put in what you want for your specific configurations and how you want that sync to work and hit save. And so then it lets you do a relative date on this next field. So you can, you can, as far as end date, so if you want this to like start to run but only run for so long, or however you want that to work. So like right now it'd be run in perpetuity starting from today. You can tell it to, so here's one of the things too. So I was talking about on the other side, you may, in that prior screen, you may not want to sync all events. Well, maybe it's just as simple as you train your staff to mark their personal events private events. And so you would not check this and then you would be all right. Part of it is obviously a training issue, but this also allows you to, it's just another control level. It seems a little bit to me like, I'm not quite sure why they have it here versus the other spot, but you can also have it work with series of events, and you can have it delete events depending upon which specific scenario that you're looking for. So then one of the things that they suggest to do, so that once you have that set up, it will show you all of this on your screen, which if you need to edit, it'll take you to the other one. Oh, also, please note, I did not mark this as active because I guess it's pointless for me to mark it as active because I can't actually get it to work right now, but just because of the Exchange side of things. But you would want to mark that as active as well, just otherwise your sync is not going to start working. So one of the things that they suggest, and this is one of the oddities about this, the fact that you have to work so closely with the infrastructure of whoever's doing your email services and your server, is that then once this is done, they suggest that you go out to Microsoft and get this free web tool that basically, and this is what Salesforce specifically says in their documentation. They point you to this. There's quite a few steps to do this. Well, I would say quite a few. It was enough steps and things that I did not put all of these here, but I did put in the hyperlink where all of them are. But you would basically run the tool and it checks everything that you just set up, and it makes sure that that connector is working between the two servers and that they actually are talking and information is going back and forth. So I will have this in the slide. So if someone would want to see that, they can. But it is upon you to do that. It was not provided, by Salesforce. So I put all of the information, and there's a whole lot more. I actually gave you the tip of the iceberg on all this, but it all came directly from Salesforce through all of this, through each one of these sites. I was curious to know if anyone is actually using this. We have had major issues with calendar and contact syncing at my company. It is not being used because users did not know how to use it. I think prior admins did not know how to set it up, a combination of all of those things. And I wasn't sure if anyone else had actually used it.
Anybody got this in use?
This is a lot for some of our clients. They're using just the email portion of the integration, but not the calendar sync. And part of it's come down to some of the IT departments aren't wanting to open their Exchange servers up to Salesforce and connect it that way. So some of it's been more of a safety concern, whether or not Salesforce says it's secure and everything like that. So So far, my experience with the event and portion is in the prior app that they had, more the desktop version versus the new one.
Yeah, so the reason the new one is nice is, number one, it is secure. But think of if you've got an outside sales rep on the road all the time, and he's got an inside sales rep or an assistant that he's working with, and that assistant may be setting up meetings for him. If the sales with your prior versions, his calendar would only synchronize with Salesforce at the time of him last connecting. So with the Lightning Sync, that's happening real time. So as soon as he gets something on his calendar, it's going to reflect that in Salesforce. So you're getting kind of real time updated information for the calendar portion. As far as contacts, I'm not a huge fan of the contact sync. Just because I think it puts a lot of noise on people's phones, and almost all of us have way more personal contacts probably than we have business contacts on our phone. So I rarely have set that one up. The other thing that I would note too is, Kevin, you showed us the service account approach, which is what you would use for an on-site, on-prem implementation of Exchange. So that is for your Exchange 2016 and 2013 on-prem type setup. If you are using Office 365, it's a lot easier to go with the OAuth connection. It just is. It's just a lot cleaner. So I would be aware of the servers that are supported with the Lightning Sync.
Well, we are a 365 for everything too now, but I mean
you're in a hybrid state there.
I was just going to say we're in an odd place, and since we're not using this, it's kind of like but it's good to have all this information and to understand how other people are using it as well. I think there's some benefits definitely to events portion. I don't think I would like to turn on the contacts. I think that would be horrible for us anyway.
I don't think I've got any customers using the contact sync. It's got its challenges for sure. Do be aware of the Outlook integration as well. So that's the app that would install inside of Outlook. That's what most people think of when they're thinking about integrating Outlook. That puts a side panel inside of Outlook that gives you a view into your Salesforce record. So if
I think I actually have it. It's just not turned on right now. Just a second. I could show you quick. Where's my? It's just a second. So that's kind of what I was talking about too, Terry. Is that like I felt like, okay, are they talking about? And I didn't because I took so long to get it.
You procrastinated. So yeah, and it's all right if you can't get it turned on, but this is probably the one most people think about when they're thinking about an Outlook integration is the ability to see Salesforce sitting in the side panel of your Outlook.
So one of the things I will say, and this maybe skewed my my view on it, is that we have some major problems with how it behaves for us, and some inconsistencies with being able to get users set up in it. Sort of sends us sometimes into a loop because, things like this. Office 365, wanting to push things to IE and not letting you go through Chrome and some of these things like that. So, I mean, you just saw right there. I mean, I should have been able to easily click on the Salesforce add-in and let it, but it's not. So
that's probably security settings that they have set up.
So that's actually not one that I am used to seeing, but I am used to seeing some of the other oddities where it will like basically throw weird odd errors that require users to sign out and then back in, and then they just don't want to adopt it. And
yeah, so the things I would probably just want to make sure you're aware of for the exam is what are the capabilities of the Outlook integration. So things like the ability to push an email into a contact and have that create a task for them, or now create an email if you've got enhanced emails. The ability to create contacts, see opportunities. So, I mean, it's kind of like having Salesforce Mobile sitting over in your side panel of your Outlook window. So I think from an exam standpoint, that's probably the things that I would be advised to kind of be aware of.
So I apologize for that, Terry.
No, you're fine, Kevin. It's all good. All good.
It's a bit interpretive, and I was trying to do this at 11 o'clock last night. So
it's a very, very small piece of the exam. So it's all good. So, all right, AppExchange. Kevin Smith, you've got AppExchange for us?
Oh, yeah. This is going to be quick, brief, and to the point.
Yeah, that's about all it can be.
Absolutely. All right, let's do this here. And we shall share. All right, can you see my screen? AppExchange.
Yep.
Excellent. AppExchange. What is the AppExchange? AppExchange is a marketplace to buy, build, sell, and install applications from Salesforce.com. Think of it as Apple's App Store or Google's Play Store. Great place to look for a solution that you may need that would take you too much time to develop on your own. So let's pay a little bit of money and speed up the process, shall we? Or maybe not pay. There are free apps out there as well. So keep that in mind. I'll give you some common uses here. It can help with market automation, and you have a provider like Silverpop, which does just that, marketing automation, email, social, and mobile solutions. Help with data quality, such as Data Cleanser. You can help with connectors to hook up external systems, Jitterbit, which we used but replaced with Informatica Cloud, so there's another one you could utilize. You can help with your company's expense management by using SalesTrip, which obviously manages the expenses. And the final screen, because that's how quick and easy this is. What you should know for the exam: you will get one question. If you get two, that would be, it's possible, but most likely you will have just one question. And every time that I've had the question regarding the AppExchange, it's so blatantly clear that you either A, need to use the AppExchange or not. You can't miss it. This is coming from a guy who has test anxiety, so I always got that one right, 100%. So with that, that's all you need to know. I mean, really, the common use for the AppExchange. Keep those in mind when they're giving you the scenario or they're asking you a question about your AppExchange. But otherwise, it's going to be, in this scenario, we need to do X, Y, Z, and the options are A, B, C, D. And A, B, and C are going to be just out there, considering what they're wanting you to do. And D will be, go to the AppExchange. That's basically how they set it up. So that's about it.
Yeah, I agree. That one's a pretty easy question to answer typically. Kind of a buy versus build type thing, and it's pretty straightforward.
Absolutely.
Very good. Any other questions regarding any of the topics that we've had today or in the past year? From a presentation standpoint, that covers all of the presentations, and we've hit every topic in that study guide. Any questions? Okay. So next week, what we're going to do is I've built out an exam process that in Salesforce, and we're just going to go through as many questions as we can work our way through next week. I'm trying to get this thing set to where it is publicly available. I'm having a little bit of a security issue with it that I'm trying to overcome, but it's getting pretty darn close. But so that's my plan for next week, is we just work through a series of questions together and kind of go from there. Hopefully, if I think some of you were going to take the exam at Dreamforce. I don't know if it was any of you guys on this call. I know somebody was planning to try to take it. Anybody here have done it or no?
That was my goal, but I did not do it.
Did not do it. Okay. All right. Anybody have the exam scheduled?
Not as of yet, but hopefully here by the end of first quarter, once things kind of slow down, I get a little more time to go over the material.
Okay. All right. If you're muted and you're trying to talk, you might want to unmute.
I'm not scheduled yet.
Okay. Are you planning to?
Yes.
Okay. All right. My recommendation on some of this stuff is to get it on the calendar sooner than later, because then you'll work toward it. I'm really good at otherwise I'm just kind of putting it off. I do that on all the exams I've done. I've had that same issue. It's like, okay, I'm just going to get it scheduled, even if it's 2 months out. And I have scheduled it to, and then had to move it because I knew I wasn't ready. But you can do that too. You can always get it scheduled, and then if it, I think you have up to like the week before the exam where you can reschedule it without any other cost to it. So it's just a good thing to have that target out there. And selfishly, I'm kind of anxious to hear how you guys do, and if this process has been successful in helping you in the process. So that'll be kind of fun to see how that turns
Terry,
out.
have you heard any rumblings about having testing available in the Des Moines metro area? Again?
I have not. No, I have not.
I keep hearing rumors, but nothing concrete. So
my recommendation would be to do it in a quiet environment somewhere in your home. It does have to be a room where you're not going to be interrupted, or that's free from distractions. You do have to have a webcam that it can be disconnected from your laptop, so because they will want to see kind of the desk and around your keyboard as well as your face the entire time. So that to me is the trickiest piece, is getting that done. But once you get that figured out, you're pretty good to go. They will watch you as you're taking the exam. So Kevin, like, you've got glasses on right now. One of the first questions they're going to ask, they're going to stop you during the exam and probably have you show the camera your glasses to make
sure.
They'll do something like that. If there's excessive noise in the room, they'll stop and ask about that as well. So I mean, they are watching you, but I think it works pretty well to do it at home. But if you're at a home with a lot of kids running around, that could be problematic.
That's a huge consideration for me, which is one of the reasons why I was asking that question.
Yeah. So it does work. It just, you have to kind of prep for it. All right. Any other questions before we let you go? We'll have fun next week, I think, going through some questions and seeing how we do. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
You're coming up with good ones to trick us and put us, get us in a vice.
I've got over 60 some questions written with it. So yeah, we've got enough to mimic an exam. So
all right.
There's no way we'll get through them all in our time slot, but it should be fun. It should be fun to see how we do. All right, folks, thank you. We will see you next week.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Terry.